The stars above Velora 7 burned with an indifferent beauty that Finn Ashford had stopped noticing 3 months ago. 17 years old, and already tired of dreaming. He kicked a rusted canister across the abandoned mining platform and watched it clatter into silence. His parents had dragged him to this forgotten colony for research opportunities. But all Finn had found was loneliness wrapped in red dust and broken machinery. The mining tunnels, stretched beneath the settlement like the ribs of some ancient creature, mostly collapsed, mostly forgotten. The corporate excavators had stripped what they wanted 20 years ago and left the bones behind. Finn's father called it an archaeological gold mine. Finn called it a tomb with better lighting. Today's exploration took him deeper than before. It's past the safety markers that nobody maintained anymore. His headlamp carved a bubble of white light through absolute darkness, and his breath created small clouds in the cold air. The tunnel walls glistened with moisture, crystalline formations that caught the light and threw it back and fractured. Rainbows. Then the tunnel opened. The cavern was massive, cathedral-sized, with walls that looked like they had been carved by something immense and purposeful. But it was the center of the chamber that stopped Finn's heart mid-beat and made him forget how to breathe properly. A dragon, not a skeleton. Not a fossil. A living dragon, suspended inside a column of crystal that rose from floor to ceiling like a pillar of captured moonlight. The creature was perhaps 20 feet long, smaller than the dragons from ancient Earth legends, with scales that shimmered between pearl and rose gold. Her wings were folded against her sides, delicate membranes stretched between elegant bone. Her eyes were closed, but her chest moved with the slowest, shallowest breath Finn had ever witnessed. One breath every 30 seconds. She was dying in the most ideas, beautiful cage imaginable. Finn approached on legs that had forgotten their purpose, his scientific training warring with something more primal and profound. The crystal wasn't ice or glass. It was something alive, something that pulsed with its own faint bioluminescence, creating patterns that looked almost like neural pathways. He placed his palm against the surface and felt warmth, felt rhythm, felt something that might have been a heartbeat that wasn't entirely his own. The moment his skin made contact, the world tilted sideways, consciousness flooded into his mind like water breaching a dam. Not words exactly, but feelings so intense they became language. Loneliness. Centuries of loneliness. Fear crystallized into patience. Hope worn down to the thinnest thread, still unbroken. And a name, Seraphine. Finn stumbled backward, gasping, his hand leaving a faint print on the crystal that glowed for 3 heartbeats before fading. The dragon's eyes remained closed, but something had changed. The breathing pattern shifted. 2 breaths in quick succession, then a pause that lasted almost a minute. Like she was trying to remember how to want to live. "You're aware," Finn whispered to the silence. "You've been aware this whole time?" The feeling that answered him was wordless affirmation mixed with exhaustion so deep it had its own gravity. How long had she been here? The mining colony had been abandoned for 2 decades. But the crystal looked older, much older, grown around her like amber around ancient insects. Finn's neural implant buzzed. His mother's voice crackled through, distorted by layers of rock. "Finn, you're past the safe zone markers. Return to base camp. You should go." He should report this. He should follow every protocol drilled into him since childhood about xenological discoveries. Instead, he found himself sitting down on the cold stone floor, his back against a boulder, his eyes fixed on the dragon who breathed in geological time. "I'll come back," he promised. "I don't know how to help yet, but I'll find a way." The emotion that touched his mind then was so gentle it felt like tears. Though no tears fell, gratitude. She had been alone so long that even the promise of another visit felt like sunlight to someone who had forgotten what warmth meant. That night, Finn couldn't eat dinner. His parents chattered about mineral compositions and atmospheric readings while he pushed synthesized. Protein around his plate and thought about. Eyes that remained closed and breaths that came so slowly they might have been prayers. His father noticed his distraction but misread it as teenage sullenness. His mother suggested he spend more time in the laboratory. Finn went to his quarters and pulled up every file in the colony database about dragons. There wasn't much. The species had been discovered 70 years ago on a distant rim world. Intelligent and peaceful, with technology that bordered on incomprehensible. Then had come the silence, a period where all dragon worlds went dark simultaneously. No distress calls. No explanation. Just empty cities and abandoned nests, scattered across a dozen planets. The galactic community had theories ranging from mass migration to cosmic plague, but nobody knew for certain. Dragons had simply disappeared from space, leaving behind only ruins and questions. Until now, Finn studied crystal formations next. There were organisms in the database that could generate crystalline structures, mostly defensive mechanisms or symbiotic relationships, but nothing that matched what he had seen. The crystal around Seraphine wasn't imprisonment. It was preservation. Some last desperate measure to keep her alive when everything else had failed. He fell asleep at his desk, still searching, and dreamed of flying through stars on wings that remembered what freedom tasted like. When he returned to the cavern the next morning with equipment stolen from his mother's lab, Seraphine's eyes were open. They were the color of storm clouds, pregnant with lightning. Silver gray with flecks of electric blue, and they were looking directly at him with an intelligence that made his breath catch. Not animal awareness. Not even human intelligence. Something older and stranger and infinitely sad. "You came back," the feeling whispered into his mind. "Nobody has come back in so long." "Promised," Finn said simply. He set up his equipment with hands that trembled slightly. Sonic resonators to test the crystal's structure. Biochemical analyzers to understand its composition. A portable medical scanner to check her vital signs. The readings that came back made no sense. Her body temperature was too low for active metabolism. Her heart rate was barely detectable. Yet she lived, suspended in a state that was neither death nor true life. "How long have you been here?" Finn asked. The answer came not in years, but in feeling. Seasons without counting. Days that blurred into meaningless succession. The weight of time made tangible. "Why?" he pressed. "Why are you trapped?" The emotion that answered was complex, layered like geological strata. Choice, sacrifice, the last breath of a dying world. Channeled into one desperate act of preservation. She had done this to herself, or someone who loved her had. To keep her safe from something terrible, Finn spent 6 hours in that cavern, running tests, taking samples, mapping the crystal structure. Every measurement told him the same impossible thing. The crystal was alive. Seraphine was alive. Together, they existed in a state of mutual preservation that defied every biological principle he had ever learned. As the sun set above ground, casting long shadows through the tunnel entrance far above, Finn packed his equipment and prepared to leave. The dragon's eyes followed his movements with an attention that felt like touch. "Tomorrow," he promised. "I'll bring better equipment tomorrow." "Why?" The question felt genuine, curious. "Why do you care?" Finn considered the question seriously. He could have said it was scientific curiosity. He could have claimed it was the discovery of a lifetime. But standing there in the fading light, with those ancient eyes watching him, he found himself telling a different truth. "Because nobody should be alone like this," he said quietly. "Nobody should have to breathe that slowly and wait that long for someone to care." The feeling that embraced his mind then was warmth, pure and simple. Gratitude beyond words. Hope rekindled after centuries of ember. Finn climbed back through the tunnels, his mind already racing with possibilities. He needed to understand the crystal better. He needed to find records of dragon biology. He needed to figure out how to free her without killing her in the process. What he didn't know, couldn't know yet, was that his promise had already set events in motion across the galaxy. That somewhere in the deep darkness between stars, sensors had detected the first stirring of dragon consciousness in 70 years. That ships were already turning, courses being plotted, toward a small, abandoned mining colony that nobody had thought about in decades. The crystal around Seraphine pulsed with light that hadn't glowed that brightly in generations. And in her ancient heart, something very much like love began to remember how to beat a little faster. Finn made it 3 days before his secret unraveled, like a poorly kept lie. His mother found the research files on his tablet, equations about crystalline life matrices and dragon physiology scattered across his screen like digital breadcrumbs leading straight to the truth. She didn't yell. Helena Voss never yelled. She simply appeared in his doorway at dawn, holding his tablet. Her expression caught somewhere between scientific fascination and parental terror. "Show me," she said. The walk to the cavern felt longer with his mother beside him, her breathing steady despite the steep descent through collapsed tunnels. Helena was 43, her hair still more brown than gray, pulled back in the same practical bun she'd worn since Finn could remember. She'd been a xenobiologist once, before corporate politics and funding cuts had driven her to the edges of explored space. Now she studied rocks and mineral deposits and tried not to look disappointed with how her life had turned out, until she saw Seraphine. Helena stopped 3 steps into the cavern, her hand flying to her mouth, eyes wide with wonder that made her look 20 years younger. "Oh, my stars," she breathed. "Oh, Finn, what have you found?" The dragon's eyes were open, tracking their approach with calm attention. The crystal around her had changed since Finn's last visit. The bioluminescent patterns were brighter, more complex, almost like synapses firing in some vast distributed brain. "She's aware," Finn said quietly. "She can communicate through touch, through emotion." "Mom, she's been waiting here for so long." Helena approached slowly, professionally, but Finn saw her hands trembling as she activated her scanner. The readings made her gasp. "This is impossible. The crystal is integrated with her cellular structure. It's not a prison, it's a cocoon, a stasis field grown from her own biology." Finally, the feeling whispered into both their minds when Helena touched the crystal. "Someone who understands." Helena jerked back, startled, then pressed her palm flat against the warm surface with something like reverence. Finn watched emotions play across his mother's face as Seraphine shared fragments of memory. The fall of dragon civilization, a plague that turned hope into ash. The desperate choice to sleep rather than die, to preserve rather than surrender. "We need help," Helena said finally. "Equipment we don't have. Expertise beyond what I can provide." She pulled out her communicator, scrolling through contacts with focused intensity. "I know someone. She's not exactly legal anymore, but she's brilliant." Dr. Helena Voss made the call that would change everything. The ship arrived 4 days later, a small research vessel that should have been scrapped a decade ago, but somehow still limped between stars. It landed near the colony perimeter without permission or announcement. And from its battered cargo bay emerged a woman who looked like trouble had learned to walk upright and dress in leather. Captain Thorne Blackwell was military trained and military scarred, with eyes that had seen too much and a mouth that smiled too rarely. She'd been dishonorably discharged from the Terran Defense Fleet 3 years ago for refusing an order, though Helena never told Finn what that order had been. Now Thorne ran medical supplies to colony worlds that corporations forgot and asked questions that made governments nervous. "He said you found something impossible," Thorne said without preamble, her boots crunching on red dust. "I came a long way for impossible, Helena. This better be worth my fuel costs," it is Helena promised. Thorne's expression when she saw Seraphine was worth documenting. The hardened cynicism cracked, replaced by raw wonder. "Well," she said softly, "that's definitely impossible." She circled the crystal columns slowly, professional assessment warring with obvious awe. "I've seen crystalline stasis before. The Andorian separatists used it during the war, but nothing like this. This is elegant. This is art. Help me." Seraphine's consciousness reached toward her. "Please." Thorne's hand went to the crystal, before she realized she'd moved. The contact made her stiffen, made her eyes go distant as emotion flooded through. When she pulled back, her jaw was set with determination Finn recognized from old military recruitment videos. "We're getting you out," Thorne said firmly. Over the next week, the cavern transformed into a laboratory. Thorne brought equipment that hummed with expensive capability. Medical scanners calibrated for xenobiology, energy regulators that could modulate fields down to the quantum level. Helena contributed her biological expertise, mapping the crystal structure with obsessive precision. Finn became the intermediary, the one Seraphine trusted most. Translating feelings into words and wishes into plans, they worked in shifts, sleeping in makeshift cots near the entrance, eating ration bars and drinking recycled coffee. The colony administrator complained about the unauthorized vessel, but Helena handled that with paperwork and strategic misdirection. The universe outside their cavern faded to background noise. It was Finn who first noticed the crystal was responding to their efforts. The patterns grew more animated when they worked nearby, less agitated when they rested. She's helping, he realized. She wants out so badly, she's trying to guide us. Then we need to listen better, Helena said. They developed a rhythm. A three-way dialogue between human science and dragon biology mediated by crystalline structure. Thorn would adjust the energy fields. Helena would monitor biological responses. Finn would place his hand against the crystal and feel Seraphine's reactions. Subtle guidance that felt like warmth or coolness, approval or warning. On the 8th day, the crystal cracked. Not shattered, not exploded. Just a single hairline fracture that ran from floor to ceiling, accompanied by a sound like wind chimes made from stars. The bioluminescent patterns flared brilliantly, then settled into new configurations that pulsed with urgent rhythm. She's waking up, Helena whispered, her scanner readings going wild. Her metabolism is accelerating, heart rate increasing. This is it, but something was wrong. Alarms screamed from Thorn's equipment. Energy readings spiked dangerously. The crystal wasn't just cracking, it was destabilizing, releasing power that had been stored for generations all at once. We need to evacuate, Thorn shouted over the rising whine. This whole cavern could collapse. Seraphine's voice crashed through their minds with desperate strength. Stay, please stay. I'm frightened. Finn pressed both hands against the crystal, feeling it vibrate beneath his palms. We're not leaving you, he promised. The crack widened. Light poured through, brilliant and alive, casting dancing shadows across ancient stone. Seraphine's breathing quickened, her chest heaving with effort as her body remembered how to fully live. The crystal began to dissolve, turning from solid to liquid to vapor that smelled like ozone and spring rain. Through the mist, through the light, a clawed hand emerged. Delicate fingers, tipped with pearl talons, reached through impossible space, grasping for something solid, something real. Finn grabbed her hand without thinking, felt scales warm and smooth against his skin, and pulled. Seraphine tumbled free in a cascade of crystal fragments and evaporating stasis fluid. Landing on the cavern floor with surprising grace, she was smaller than she'd appeared in the crystal, barely 10 feet long, her wings folded tight against her sides. But she was free. She was breathing real air. She was looking at them with eyes that saw the present instead of the past. Thank you, she whispered into 3 minds simultaneously. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Then she collapsed, exhausted beyond measure, and Finn caught her head before it hit stone. Her scales were fever-hot beneath his hands, her breath coming in rapid gasps. Helena was already there with medical equipment, Thorn right behind with energy supplements and fluid IVs. Her body is in shock, Helena said, reading vital signs with practiced eyes. 70 years in stasis. She needs time to readjust, to remember how to exist in normal time. They worked through the night, monitoring, adjusting, keeping her stable as her biology recalibrated itself. Finn stayed closest, one hand always touching her somewhere, providing comfort through contact. She drifted in and out of consciousness, sharing fragments of dreams that felt like memories, showing them glimpses of a world where dragons danced between stars and sang symphonies that made nebulae bloom. As dawn approached, Seraphine finally opened her eyes fully and looked at each of them in turn. You gave me life again, she said clearly. I am forever bound to you by gratitude and something deeper. Her gaze lingered on Finn, and the emotion that passed between them was complex, layered with meanings neither quite understood yet. Appreciation, connection, the beginning of something that had no name in any human language. Rest now, Finn said gently. You're safe. We'll figure out everything else later. But even as Seraphine drifted into healing sleep, even as Helena and Thorn celebrated their impossible success with exhausted laughter, none of them knew that their triumph had already been detected. That sensors across 3 star systems had registered the energy signature of a dragon waking from stasis. That ships were already accelerating toward Valora 7, carrying both hope and danger in their cargo holds. The crystal fragments scattered across the cavern. Floor still glowed faintly, pulsing with residual life, marking the place where imprisonment became freedom and where 3 humans had chosen compassion over caution. Outside, the stars burned with their indifferent beauty. But inside that cavern, something infinitely more precious had been born. Trust between species. Hope after long despair. And the first fragile threads of a bond that would change the fate of 2 civilizations. The diplomatic shuttle arrived without warning on the 13th day, sleek and official, bearing the silver seal of the Galactic Council. Finn watched it descend through the observation window, his stomach knotting with anxiety. Beside him, Seraphine pressed close, her body now fully recovered, radiating warmth and nervous energy in equal measure. "They come for me," she whispered into his mind. "We won't let anyone take you," Finn promised. Though he had no idea how to keep that promise against official authority, Ambassador Callista Ray emerged from the shuttle like diplomacy. Personified. Her silver hair coiled elegantly, her expression professionally neutral. She was 60 if she was a day, with eyes that missed nothing and a reputation for solving impossible problems with impossible solutions. Behind her came an escort of 4 guards and 1 other passenger who made Finn's breath stop, another dragon. He was massive, perhaps 40 feet from nose to tail, scales the color of midnight sky shot through with veins of gold. His wings, when he stretched them in the confined space, seemed to encompass the entire landing platform. Power radiated from him like heat from a star, ancient and absolute. "Breathin," Seraphine breathed in the emotion that flooded through was painfully complex. Recognition, relief, fear, something. That might have been love worn down by centuries of separation. The meeting took place in the colony's largest conference room, hastily cleared of mining equipment and made presentable. Callista sat at one end of the long table, Breathin coiled behind her like living sculpture. Helena, Thorn, and Finn took the opposite end, with Seraphine positioned between them, her smaller form dwarfed by her elder's presence, but her posture proud and unafraid. "Let me be direct," Callista began, her voice carrying the weight of practiced authority. "The reawakening of a dragon, after 70 years of silence, has created political waves across known space. There are factions who see this as an opportunity. Others see it as a threat. My job is to determine which it actually is." "She's not a political asset," Finn said sharply. "She's a person." Callista's expression softened fractionally. "I don't disagree. But the universe rarely cares about my personal opinions." She gestured to Breathin. "Prince Breathin has traveled very far to find her. Perhaps he should explain why." The great dragon's voice when it came was not telepathic but spoken, deep and resonant, each word carefully shaped. "Seraphine is the last daughter of the crystal line. It's the only surviving member of a bloodline that once shaped the very stars we sail between. When the plague came, when our civilization fell, we made desperate choices. Some fled to the dark places beyond known space. Others chose the long sleep, as she did, hoping to wake to a better world. I did not expect to wake at all," Seraphine admitted quietly. "But you did," Breathin continued, his golden eyes fixing on Finn with unsettling intensity. "Thanks to this human child who chose compassion over protocol, an act that has complicated everything beautifully." Thorn leaned forward, her military training showing in her posture. "Complicated how?" Callista took over. "The dragon enclaves beyond the rim have been monitoring human expansion for decades, debating whether our species can be trusted with the knowledge of their survival. This event has forced their hand. Prince Breathin has been sent as envoy to establish formal contact, but there are conditions." "Are always conditions," Helena muttered. "Indeed," Callista agreed. "The primary condition is Seraphine's safe return to dragon space. She is considered too valuable, too significant, to remain in human custody. No, Seraphine's mental voice rang with unexpected force. I will not be traded like property even to my own people. The room fell silent. Even Breathin seemed taken aback by her vehemence. What do you want? Callista asked carefully. Seraphine rose to her full height, her wings spreading slightly. I want choice. For 70 years I had none. Suspended in crystal, waiting for death or rescue. These humans gave me both rescue and freedom. I will not surrender the second to reclaim the first. Finn felt his heart swell with pride and terror in equal measure. She stays with us, he said firmly, if she wants to. Brevin's laugh was like thunder rolling through mountains. Bold words from a hatchling human. Do you understand what you're claiming? The responsibility. The complications? I understand she deserves to decide her own fate, Finn shot back. Something shifted in Brevin's expression, respect mixing with something that might have been sadness. You speak truth that shames us. We dragons pride ourselves on wisdom, yet we were prepared to claim her without asking her wishes. He bowed his massive head toward Seraphine. Forgive my presumption, daughter of crystal. What is your choice? Seraphine looked at Finn, at Helena, at Thorn, at the humans who had freed her and stayed with her and treated her as a person rather than a prize. Then she looked at Breathin, at the representative of her own species, the connection to a heritage she had thought lost forever. I choose both, she said finally. I wish to learn of my people again, but I wish to remain with those who saved me. Is there no path that honors both desires? Callista smiled for the first time, and it transformed her face completely. Actually, there might be. If all parties are willing to be creative. The proposal she outlined was unprecedented. Seraphine would become the first official liaison between dragon enclaves and human space, residing on Valorous 7, but traveling freely between both civilizations. Finn, having established the initial bond, would be trained as her companion and translator, learning dragon culture and biology. Helena would lead the scientific research into dragon-human cooperation. Thorn would provide security and transport. It's not perfect, Callista admitted. There will be opposition on both sides. But it's a beginning. A bridge between species built on trust rather than treaties. And what of those who oppose? Seraphine asked. Brevin's expression grew serious. There are factions among my people who believe humans are too young, too reckless to be trusted with dragon secrets. They would prefer isolation, permanent and absolute. Your choice to stay with humans will be seen by some as betrayal. And there are human factions who see dragons as potential weapons or resources to be exploited. Callista added grimly. You'll have enemies, all of you. Powerful ones. Finn looked at his mother, at Thorn, at the dragon who had become more than a discovery, more than a project. We've already chosen, he said quietly. The question is whether you'll support that choice. Callista and Breathin exchanged a long look, an entire conversation passing in silence. Finally, both nodded. We will support it, Callista said formally. The Galactic Council will recognize Valorous 7 as neutral ground, a place where both species can meet and learn. You'll have protections, resources, and hopefully, time to prove this can work. And then I accept, Seraphine said. I choose the bridge. I choose both my heritage and my rescuers. I choose hope over fear. The formal agreements took 3 more days to finalize. Legal language twisted into shapes that satisfied both dragon custom and human law. During those days, Finn spent every possible moment with Seraphine, learning to communicate beyond simple emotions. Beginning to understand the vast gulf of culture and experience between them. On the final evening before the diplomatic ships departed, Finn and Seraphine stood on the observation platform watching the binary sunset paint the sky in impossible colors. The wind carried the scent of rust and possibilities. I am afraid, Seraphine admitted quietly. Afraid I will fail. Afraid I am not strong enough to be what both our peoples need. You're not alone, Finn said, resting his hand on her shoulder, feeling the warmth of her scales. Whatever comes, we face it together. She leaned into his touch, and the emotion that passed between them was no longer simple gratitude or duty. It had deepened into something richer, more complex: affection, partnership, the beginning of a bond that transcended species entirely. "You saved my life," she said. "But more than that, you gave me reason to want to live again. That is a gift beyond measuring." You gave us hope," Finn replied. "Hope that different species can understand each other. Hope that compassion matters more than politics." That's pretty valuable, too. Below them, the mining colony had transformed. New buildings were already under construction, research facilities and diplomatic quarters rising from red dust. Ships came and went now, carrying scientists and diplomats and curious souls from both species. The forgotten outpost had become the most important location in explored space. All because one boy had refused to let someone suffer alone. Breathin departed with a promise to return, to teach Seraphine the history and culture she had missed during her long sleep. Callista left behind a team of diplomats and enough legal protections to hopefully keep the wolves at bay. Helena threw herself into research with renewed passion. Thorn stayed, claiming someone needed to keep the idealists from getting themselves killed. And Finn stood beside his dragon, watching the stars emerge one by one, knowing that they had started something beautiful and dangerous and utterly necessary. The crystal fragments from Seraphine's prison had been collected and stored, still faintly glowing, a reminder of where they had begun. "What happens now?" Seraphine asked. Finn smiled. "Now we figure it out together. We build bridges. We prove that different doesn't have to mean enemy. We show to civilizations that understanding is possible. It is a large responsibility for one boy and one dragon. Good thing we're not alone anymore." Around them, the colony hummed with new life. Dragon scholars, conversing with human scientists. Diplomatic staff learning to navigate the complications of interspecies protocol. Young people from both civilizations drawn by the promise of something unprecedented. The future was uncertain, filled with challenges neither could fully anticipate. There would be opposition, setbacks, moments of despair. But there would also be triumph, discovery. In the slow building of trust between species who had lived in mutual ignorance for too long. Seraphine spread her wings, catching the evening wind, and for the first time since her awakening, she laughed. The sound was like bells and bird song and pure joy made audible. "Then let us begin," she said. "Let us show them what's possible when hearts refuse to be separated by the boundaries of species." Finn reached up to touch her outstretched wing, feeling the delicate membrane warm beneath his fingers. Together, he agreed, and above them, stars watched their improbable partnership with the same indifferent beauty they had always shown. But perhaps, just perhaps, the universe itself leaned in a little closer, curious to see what would grow from this meeting of dragon and human. From crystallized despair, transformed into living hope. The story of Belarus 7 was just beginning, and it would be told across both civilizations for generations to come. Not as a tale of conquest or dominance, but as something infinitely more precious. A story of connection, of choosing compassion, of love that transcended every boundary that fear had ever built. The crystal heart had kept its promise, and in doing so had changed the galaxy forever.